They came at sunrise, just as the dew still clung to the tips of the wild grass. 3 black trucks, polished to a smug gleam, rolled up to the edge of Red Rock Road like they were invading enemy territory. Dust puffed behind them, swirling through the morning air as the engines cut. I stood at the end of my ranch driveway with a thermos of coffee in one hand and a quiet fury in the other. My name's Luke Brennan. I've worked this land since I was 17, took it over when my dad's knees gave out, and kept it running through fires, floods, and family losses. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the HOA of Silver Mesa Heights. They weren't from here. That much was obvious the moment they broke ground 6 months back. Wealthy transplants with solar panels, landscaping rules, and a taste for boutique fences. They built their subdivision on land my great-grandfather sold off decades ago, never thinking it would one day try to choke us out. Red Rock Road wasn't just dirt.
It was a lifeline.
For 80 years, it's been the only passable route connecting my ranch to the county highway. My cattle trailers rolled down it every spring. Feed deliveries came up it every fall. It's clearly marked on the easement filed with the county clerk, stamped and notarized in 1942. No one ever questioned it, until they arrived. The first one out of the truck was Dale Kresnick, president of the HOA. Square jaw, square sunglasses, and the kind of confidence you only get from yelling at waiters. He was flanked by 2 others, Marla, a tightly wound woman with a clipboard, and Jonas, a guy who wore tactical boots like he expected to be drafted into war at any moment. Behind them stood a private security guard, hand on his holstered sidearm. I didn't move. "Luke," Dale called, voice oily with faux civility. "We need to talk about access." "No need," I replied. "It's legal. County recognized. Your problem's with the paperwork, not me." Dale chuckled as if I'd just recited a joke. "Actually, we've had that easement reviewed. Seems there's some ambiguity. Until it's resolved, we're limiting access. Effective immediately." He gestured toward a green ATV now parked dead center of the road, chained to a post they'd cemented overnight. Mounted on the ATV was a motion-activated camera, blinking red. "You're trespassing on our road now," Marla added, without even looking me in the eye. I raised an eyebrow. "So, what? You're holding my land hostage with a golf cart and a GoPro?" Jonas took a step forward. Watch the tone. His hand drifted toward his belt. That's when I understood. This wasn't about land. It wasn't about property lines or bylaws or interpretation. It was about control.
Power.
They didn't want to share the road. They wanted to own it, and they were willing to flash guns to make it happen. "You're blocking agricultural access," I said coldly. "You know that's a federal violation?" Dale shrugged. "Then sue us." The message was clear. They had money, lawyers' time. I had cows and a ticking clock. "Now," Dale continued, "we'll give you until this evening to move your equipment and find alternate routes. After that, the road's closed." I stepped back into my truck, silent. Rage burned in my chest, but I didn't show it. I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction. I reversed slowly, deliberately, back down the half-mile stretch toward my ranch. My tires carved tracks in the dry soil, marks of humiliation and warning. Back home, I found my father on the porch, staring at the horizon. He didn't ask what happened. He'd seen enough men with puffed chests and thin skin in his day to know a bluff when he saw one. "They come with guns?" he asked without turning. "Yeah," I muttered. "And a camera." He sipped his tea, thoughtful. "Then maybe it's time we stop playing nice." I sat beside him. The silence between us said more than words could. They'd thrown down a gauntlet. And the thing about gauntlets is, once you pick them up, there's no turning back. The next morning, I walked past the locked barn and straight to the old corral where Clarence stood like a furry statue, chewing lazily on a broken fence post. Clarence isn't your average donkey. He's all attitude and ankles, with a jaw like a cinder block and the temperament of a retired brawler. We picked him up at an auction years ago for $80 and a ham sandwich, figuring he'd be good for hauling hay. What we got was a 4-legged wrecking ball with a taste for chaos and the ability to detect arrogance like a bloodhound. He brayed once when he saw me, a deep, rusty hinge of a sound that echoed across the pasture. "Time to earn your keep," I muttered, patting his side. I spent the rest of the morning tightening the rusted tow chain we used for pulling stuck tractors out of creek beds. Clarence watched me work with mild interest, flicking his tail at invisible flies. By noon, I had a plan. Simple. Legal. Infuriating. The HOA's shiny green ATV had stayed parked across Red Rock Road like a rotting monument to their authority. Every truck and trailer I owned was too wide to get around it, and I wasn't about to let my cattle starve because a few pampered transplants needed to feel powerful. But Clarence? He didn't need a road. He was a road. I loaded the chain, grabbed my phone, and waved down my foreman, Ricky. "Film this," I said. "Keep it steady, and don't miss a second." Ricky squinted. "You gonna run him over?"
"Nope," I said.
"I'm just moving some trash." The HOA's camera caught me coming from a mile off, Clarence trotting behind me, ears perked like he smelled a challenge. I kept my steps measured, deliberate, as we approached the ATV blockade. There was no one around, just the hum of electronics and the soft rustle of desert wind. I wrapped the chain around the rear axle, looped it twice, then tied it to Clarence's harness with the kind of knot my grandfather taught me, meant to hold through storms and cattle stampedes. "Ready, boy," I whispered. Clarence huffed. I clicked my tongue, and he leaned forward like a man who knew exactly what needed doing. The chain went taut with a metallic groan, and the ATV shifted an inch, then another. Its tires bounced once, then surrendered. Clarence pulled with the ease of a seasoned plow horse, dragging the whole contraption off the road and into the dry field. Dust rose behind him in a thick trail, and I followed at a safe distance, filming every glorious moment. Past the fence,
Past the mesquite line.
straight down the old feeding trail to the pig pens. Now, let me explain something about pigs. They don't like intrusions. Especially not loud, smelly ones with spinning parts. Clarence dropped the ATV in the middle of the pen like a gift to the gods of mud and mayhem. The pigs descended on it in a frenzy, snorting, stomping, rubbing against it until it tipped on its side with a satisfying crunch. One of them, Rosie, the big sow with a scar over her eye, claimed the driver's seat and refused to move. I panned the camera, got the whole scene, posted it that night under a burner YouTube account called Donkey Justice. Ricky laughed until he choked. My dad slapped his knee and muttered, "That's how you handle bullies." The next morning, the video had 90,000 views. By the time lunch rolled around, it had 240,000. I got a message from a reporter in Vegas asking for a quote. Comments poured in, people cheering Clarence like he was the second coming of Clint Eastwood. Memes popped up. Someone photoshopped him into a Marvel poster. But by sunset, trouble arrived. 3 sheriff's vehicles rolled onto my ranch, followed closely by Dale in a full suit, tie crooked, face tight. The ATV, now mud-soaked and dented, sat like a war casualty in the back of a flatbed. "You'll be hearing from our attorneys," Dale snapped, waving a stack of papers. That was theft, destruction of property. I handed the deputy a USB drive. Footage of them blocking a legal easement.
Armed.
Refusing access. The deputy, a local named Jenkins, slid it into his pocket. "We'll take a look. Might want to hold off on that lawsuit, Mr. Kresnik." Dale's mouth opened, then closed again. Clarence, watching from the barn, let out a long, theatrical bray. And just like that, the tide turned. The video kept climbing. By the end of the week, Donkey Justice had crossed 1.2 million views. Clarence had his own fan page. Someone even sent us a crocheted saddle blanket with HOA Slayer stitched in gold thread. But viral fame wasn't the prize I was after. It was leverage. Dale Kresnik and the HOA board hadn't expected resistance, let alone a public spectacle. Their strategy had always relied on silence and slow suffocation, paper cuts over time. But now the world was watching, and they were flailing. Still, a wounded animal is often the most dangerous. 2 days after the pig pen incident, I got a certified letter, an official cease and desist accusing me of endangering community property, malicious harassment, and donkey misconduct. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off the porch. Donkey misconduct, my dad echoed, holding the letter up to the light like it might be a joke. What's next? Public indecency for the pigs? But the letter came with teeth, fines, threats of injunctions, and a demand that I stop using Red Rock Road until the legal status of the easement is clarified. They were trying to grind me down through paperwork, one motion at a time. I knew I needed more than spectacle. I needed proof. And, as it turned out, Dale had left a trail. Ricky and I started digging. We filed a few FOIA requests, asked around at the county clerk's office, talked to some of the contractors who'd worked on Silver Mesa Heights. One of them, an old surveyor named Paul, spilled the beans over coffee and a slice of my mom's peach pie. They knew about your easement before they even paved the road, Paul said, shaking his head. They just figured you wouldn't fight back. I got a copy of the subdivision plans. Right there on the second page, highlighted in blue ink, easement, Brennan Ranch access, protected under county agreement #217B. They hadn't just overlooked it. They'd intentionally paved over it, then tried to bury the documentation. That night, I crafted a new video, simple, clean, and sharp as barbed wire. Footage of the armed standoff, the dragged ATV, the letter about donkey misconduct, and finally, a close-up of the easement clause with the county stamp and Paul's voice explaining exactly what it meant. I uploaded it under the title, They Knew, and tried to erase it. 2 days later, the HOA's inbox crashed under public backlash. Civil liberties groups weighed in. Local news stations aired the story. I started getting calls from property rights lawyers offering pro bono support. Dale? He went silent. But Marla didn't. She showed up at my gate at 7 a.m., dressed in business casual like she was heading to a city council meeting. No clipboard this time. Just a brittle smile and eyes that flicked around like she was expecting a sniper. We'd like to resolve this civilly, she said, her voice rehearsed. There's a lot of misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I cut in. Your subdivision's sitting on a lie. And now the whole country knows. She hesitated. If you take the videos down, we're willing to renegotiate access. I leaned on the fence post. You people pointed a gun at me on my land. You think a handshake fixes that? She said nothing. I stepped closer. You want to resolve this? Drop the fines. Admit the easement is legal. Apologize publicly. Then we'll talk. Her jaw tightened. We'll be in touch. Tell Dale he's got until Friday, I said. After that, the pigs get new furniture again. She left in silence. By Friday, they hadn't responded. So I did what any stubborn rancher with a grudge and a donkey would do. I found another of their toys, a golf cart this time, parked just over the edge of their freshly mulched community garden. I walked Clarence over, slow and casual, waved to a few joggers who'd started recognizing us from the videos, then hitched the chain. We didn't go far, just the HOA's ornamental pond, freshly stocked with koi. The cart went in with a splash that sent orange fish leaping for safety. Clarence brayed. Cameras flashed. The internet lost its mind. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was a reckoning. And the best part? We still had one more move to make. It didn't take long for the koi pond incident to boil over. Within hours, local news vans were camped outside the HOA's Welcome Center, broadcasting live beneath the embarrassed glow of their hand-carved Silver Mesa Heights sign. A drone shot of Clarence staring smugly at the waterlogged golf cart made the evening news in 3 states. The footage got picked up by a national talk show, and the host called him America's most dangerous donkey. I couldn't have written it better myself. Dale, however, was nowhere to be seen. Not at HOA meetings. Not behind the mirrored glass of the Welcome Center. Not even on the trail where he used to power walk like he owned the land beneath his Nikes. He had vanished. But the war wasn't won yet. I filed a formal grievance with the county planning board and handed over every document, video, and signed witness statement we had. Paul the surveyor even submitted an affidavit, confirming the HOA board knew about the easement before construction and chose to ignore it. The county convened a public hearing. It was held in the high school gymnasium, packed with folding chairs, angry residents, and the buzz of news cameras lining the back wall. The air smelled like old popcorn and tension. I stepped up to the microphone when they called my name, a stack of evidence under one arm and Clarence's bridle hanging from my belt like a trophy.
I didn't rant.
Didn't grandstand. Just told the truth about the intimidation, the armed blockade, the buried documentation, and the lengths I'd gone to reclaim what was legally mine. The room was silent by the time I finished. Then someone clapped. Then the whole room did. The planning board adjourned for deliberation. An hour later, they returned with their ruling. The Brennan Ranch easement was not only valid but had been illegally obstructed by the HOA. They declared all enforcement actions and fines null. The board was ordered to issue a formal apology and cover legal fees. They also recommended a full audit of the HOA's leadership. The cherry on top? A week later, Dale was photographed at LAX, suitcase in hand, trying to avoid a reporter's questions about misuse of community funds. Turned out he'd been quietly billing the HOA for security improvements that never existed. Guess it's hard to manage embezzlement when a donkey's more popular than you. As for me, I kept the videos up. Donkey Justice became a brand. I sold t-shirts, mugs, even a calendar featuring Clarence in seasonal outfits. The money we raised went into a legal defense fund for other landowners dealing with HOA abuse. Turns out there were a lot more of them than I thought. People started showing up at the ranch, not tourists, but neighbors, other ranchers, veterans, families who'd been pushed around by petty tyrants behind clipboards and bylaws. We shared stories.
Laughed. Planned.
We weren't just fighting back. We were building something better. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills and the pigs grunted in the distance, Ricky handed me a cold beer and nodded toward Clarence, who was lying in the shade like a retired outlaw. "You think he knows what he started?" he asked. I smiled. He knows enough. A few weeks later, the new HOA board sent me a letter, not a threat, not a fine, just an official acknowledgement of the easement and a request to install a shared access gate, complete with remote entry and a respectful distance from my livestock paths. I agreed. We installed the gate, painted it ranch red, and added a carved wooden sign above it. Clarence Crossing, watch for hooves. We never had another issue. The land stayed free. The roads stayed open. And the people who thought they could bully a rancher into silence learned a hard, muddy lesson. Because in the end, it wasn't about property lines or bylaws. It was about standing your ground, knowing your rights, and remembering that sometimes justice comes with hooves and a harness. And maybe, just maybe, a bray that echoes loud enough to shake the mountains.